Hi, it's Dwyer. It is June 20th, 2025. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, folks, I thought this series would be over. I thought OKC was going to win Game 6. I believe before the series started, I made a video where I said I thought OKC was going to win in 6 or less. Right? I privately thought OKC was going to win in 5. But I gave myself a little bit of wiggle room. Right? Well, Game 6 is come and gone. At one point, I had my Action Network app out. I was looking at the stats live. Indy had 8 steals. OKC had none. At one point, OKC was something like 1 for 15 from 3-point range. We were about halfway through the third quarter, and OKC had not yet scored 50 points. OKC was dominated. But I need for folks to realize that there's a history that's bigger than these two teams. There is a betting outcome that dominates the idea of Game 7s. Just understand that home teams have won 15 of 19 Game 7s. That's a 78.9% win rate. Only 4 road teams have ever won a finals Game 7. The 1955 Nationals, that's well before my time. The 1969 Celtics, right? The Celtic coach was actually a player. Bill Russell, right? He's in LA. He looks up at the ceiling. He sees balloons. This is part of Celtic folklore. Celtic fans know this. He looks up. He sees balloons. He is irate. He turns to Jerry West and he then says, and I'm going to censor this, those effing balloons are staying up there. Right? This is the infamous game where the coach wouldn't put Wilt back in the game. And if you know one thing about Wilt Chamberlain, it's that he would play about 48 minutes a game early in his career. Right? Chamberlain is one of the all-time minute guys. I believe there's a season out there where Chamberlain averaged more than 48 minutes a game. Right? Because there were some overtime games. Understand, the Celtics won that game 108-106. It wasn't like they dominated. Another team that won a road game on the road, the 1978 Washington Bullets. And then, of course, you get to the most recent team. And you'll notice the gap between 78 and 2016. Right? Understand, Cleveland had not won a championship in any sport since Jim Brown left the field in 1964 and won the NFL championship before the Super Bowl was even invented. Right? So, of course, down 3-1 to a defending champion, the Golden State Warriors. Draymond Green, a Warrior, gets suspended. Cleveland comes roaring back. You get to Game 7. This is the Warrior team that set the record for the most wins in the regular season. Right? Displacing Jordan and the Bulls, who had won 72 games. Right? Let me point out, Chicago Bull fans will point out, there are no heroics of Jordan in a Game 7 of an NBA Finals. Because Jordan 6-0 in NBA Finals, never had to play a Game 7. Well, here, LeBron and Cleveland and Cavs fans know this better than I do. I remember where I was. I was at an Applebee's in West San Jose. Right? LeBron James comes out, 27 points, 11 boards, 11 assists, 3 blocks. Right? The Cavaliers upset the Golden State Warriors. Famous moment, Steph Curry, yes, that's Steph Curry, is guarding Kyrie Irving. And just understand, Kyrie Irving drains the 3 with less than a minute left, right? 50-something seconds left to seal the win for Cleveland. Right, folks? That's the last time a road team has won a Game 7 in an NBA Finals. That's the last time. So if you're just betting the chalk, right, you cannot believe your eyes, and it was terrible for OKC. You cannot believe what you just saw in Game 6. You can't. You have to think about the 78.9% win rate. You need to think about the fact that, no road teams in the 90s, no road teams in the O's, only one road team in the teens won a Game 7 on the road in an NBA Finals. Add in the fact that you're talking about a sizable gap here in the win totals, regular season, between the OKC Thunder, who look to me, and this is a rare team, right? They're the youngest team in an NBA Finals since the Bill Walton Portland Trailblazers in the 70s. Right? This team looks to me like the Dallas Cowboys looked in the early 90s in the NFL. You get the feeling this team is on the runway, ready to take off. Right? But I need for folks to just understand they're going to have games like yesterday where they're flat. Right? The team's actually a very good three-point shooting team. 1 for 15 at one point in the game. I don't even know what the final numbers were. The team's one of the dominant defensive teams in the league. But yet they had no steals, while the other team had 8 sometime in the second half. It was ridiculous. So, I'm expecting OKC to conform to history. Right? I'm expecting OKC to win Game 7 at home. Right? Let me point out, too, I know I mentioned Draymond Green getting suspended. Just understand how that Game 7 turned out for him. It's one of the great performances in NBA history. It needs to be mentioned. 32 points on 11 of 15 shooting, 6 of 8 from 3, 15 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals. He played 47 minutes. His team lost. So here, I'm just going with history. Right? I'm not, going to outthink the room. I do believe, and I know this is somewhat controversial, right? OKC has 3 of the top 4 players playing in this series. Right? I think Tyrese Halliburton is one of the top players in the series. Let me point out, too, and I know this is a generational thing. There's no way Tyrese Halliburton would be out there at less than 100%, and Jordan's Bulls not running every other play at him. Right? There's simply no way. I don't know what's going on with current ballers and stuff like that, they just don't have the one-on-one mindset that guys did in the 80s. Right? But Tyrese Halliburton, to me, is one of the best players in this series. The other three are the MVP, SGA, the guy who dropped 40 in a game, Jalen Williams, and the guy who had 15 rebounds in a game, Chet Holmgren. There's a talent gap, and the superior talents are going to be playing at home. I think OKC cuts down the Nets after Game 7. I thought they would Game 6. As I mentioned in my prior video, I did have Indy received 6 points. Wasn't expecting Indy to win. Was just hoping for a cover. Was shocked that the game was effectively over early in the second half. Right? So OKC is going to have to do better than they did in Game 6, but history tells us, right? It tells us that unless there is some magical moment, right, a proud Boston Celtic team that had lived in the finals, that Game 7 of the 69 NBA Finals is Russell's last game, right? He had 11 rings when he walked away from the sport, right? Unless something like that happens. Also, think about the Cavaliers in 2016. They were in the NBA Finals against the Warriors the prior year. In other words, this was a veteran team. LeBron had already won multiple rings, right? Indy is up against it. They don't have the history in the finals that Russell Celtics had or that LeBron had, right? There isn't the familiarity that, Cleveland had with Golden State. Understand, too, there's another dynamic that you need to know about, right? Kyrie Irving was hurt for the prior NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors, right? Just understand, Cleveland felt that they weren't 100% when they lost to the Warriors the first time. You don't have any storylines like that here, right? Indy hasn't been in a finals for a long time, right? Not that this OKC team has either, but you just don't have the kind of history you have on some of these teams that won the Game 7 on the road in the past, right? So if you're betting chalk, don't argue with a 78.9% win rate, right? Recognize, too, going into yesterday's game, OKC was up in the series 3-2. Understand, too, that OKC beat Joker and the Denver Nuggets in a Game 7 this playoff run, right? They've already been through a Game 7. This team, right? So I'm leaning OKC. There's a reason why the line, the last I looked, and it's been a few hours, please double check me, is OKC by 9.5 points, right? I'm expecting them to bounce back. Also, let me say, too, emotionally, for a young team, I believe it's less damaging to get blown out than it would be if you have a chance at an NBA title going down to the last minute and then the other team makes some comeback and suddenly no ring on your finger and you have another game to play. Right here, OKC guys were on the bench midway through the third quarter, right? Starting guys. The game was pretty much over. Right? Mentally, this young team could process it and be ready to bounce back. Right? I think this is a tough team. They had to win, as they did in this series, a game on the road after giving away home court against Denver. right? They had to win a game in Denver. This series, they gave away home court. They had to win a game in Indy. So this OKC team has been in a position where they've had to win a game 7. They've had to perform, right? I'm leaning them in game 7 here. Nothing I've seen, even that disastrous game 6, tells me that Indy is going to win this. Let me also say, too, there's the let's rally around a fallen soldier moment. Now, Tyrese Halliburton didn't look as hurt as I thought he would, right? He looked hurt, but he didn't look as hurt. Right? That game 6, you got the feeling, there was a thought until a few hours before the game that Halliburton might not play. So you can imagine that energized the team. What I found, my own betting experience, is that when an important player, and I do believe Halliburton is the best player on the Pacers, when an important player gets injured, the other guys will play at peak capacity to compensate. That usually lasts for one game, right? If there's a team that's gonna have some emotional letdown, I think it's gonna be Pacers, right? Okay, you've gotten to game 7. That adrenaline of, hey, we've got to do this. Our leader's injured. We've got to protect him. We've got to make this work. Right? You've already had that level of adrenaline for a game 6. It's going to be tough to maintain for a game 7. Right? Let's see what happens. I'm going with the home team in game 7, in part because history tells us that they have a 78.9% win rate. Understand what that means roughly is that for every 5 games in which a road team plays a game 7 in an NBA Finals, they only win 1, roughly. Right? I think OKC cuts down the nets. I think Shea gets his ring. Let's remember the 1975 World Series, right? The Big Red Machine, dominant team, was forced to go 7 by the Boston Red Sox, right? The very next year, the Big Red Machine in the postseason did not lose a game, right? For me personally, in terms of great teams, right? The Big Red Machine, the 72-win Bulls, they're right at the top. Right? Don't look at Game 6 and suddenly think that OKC can't play. Right? Understand what happened to the 77 Trailblazers. Walton, and look at the films, until Joker. Wilt's before my time. Until Joker, I hadn't seen a big guy pass the ball better than Bill Walton did with that Blazer team. Right? They were special and they were young. But understand, Walton developed health problems. Right? Walton developed some problems with his feet. It would be like Shea winning a title and then having chronic feet problems. Right? It took them out of the late 70s. Right? Just food for thought, something to think about. Here, if this team stays healthy, like the Big Red Machine did, I'm just telling you, they could win this in Game 7. Then next year, the key question is going to be, right, how do they look against Boston, if Boston can find a way to compensate for the loss of Jason Tatum, and if new ownership doesn't give away the team. Right? I'm hearing they want to trade Drew Holiday and stuff like that. Boston was up against the second apron in terms of the salary cap. right? I believe the only question next year is, can OKC, if they win the title, right, can OKC deal with Boston or Cleveland? Right? I think the Knicks, that's going to be a complicated situation involving a new coach. Right? In the West, I just don't know what Denver or what Minnesota or what the Lakers can do. The wild card team, of course, is Houston. Houston's making a lot of great moves this offseason. I like the idea that they re-signed Steven Adams. Understand Houston's one of the youngest teams in the league. I like the idea that they re-signed their head coach. Like OKC, they have a great defensive culture there. Their problem is the same problem that plagued Phi Slamajama, right? They can't hit free throws. But Houston's a threat to OKC. Boston, if it rights the ship, if Porzingis is suddenly healthy for a whole year. Cleveland, Kenny Atkinson, excellent head coach. Cleveland has me convinced they were banged up going into the playoffs this year, right? But just understand, as with the Bulls, you look at the team and you realize, wow, there are very few teams out there that can even challenge them. I believe that's the talent gap between these two teams, Indy and OKC. OKC looks like it has a chance to be special. Now, let me add a caveat to that. If they lose Game 7 on their home court, then all bets are off, right? Understand, teams that lose in an NBA Finals, Boston, just a couple years back, against the Golden State Warriors, right? They typically, my opinion, non-scientific, need a year just to recover emotionally, right? Everyone in the franchise knows, hey, the food was on the plate. You know, we had a great opportunity and we let it pass, right? So even Boston, which, you know, won the ring last year, right? Remember, the year before that, they struggled. I believe because they knew the year before that they were up 2-1 at home and let that final slip away. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.